Hi, my name is Lisa Gray, and today for my airline management project, I will be discussing the environmental aspects of the aviation industry. So, for my topic, I wanted to focus on the environmental aspect of the aviation industry and just kind of measure the impacts that it can have on the environment. EPA has made several changes on the rules and regulations towards transportation, including the aviation industry, and I want to find out how this has affected the major aspects of the airlines in the United States. So, for my research, I decided to focus on three big and similar airlines in the United States, which were American Airlines, United Airways, and then also Delta. And then with these three main airlines, I'm measuring the number of flights, the number of passengers, and the net income from the years 2003 until 2015. And I'm just kind of going to compare and contrast the trends and patterns and see if the rules and regulations that EPA has made has indeed affected these numbers. Okay, so for some background information, I pulled this chart from the EPA website. And yeah, as you can see, aircraft make up 9% of greenhouse gas emissions as of the year 2006, and that's obviously gone up since then, along with the growth of aviation travel. Aircraft can have some unique and complex effects on the atmosphere due to the release of emissions and water vapor at a high altitude. For instance, jetcraft can create condensation trails, also known as contrails, at cruise altitudes in the upper atmosphere due to the combination of water vapor in aircraft engine exhaust and the low ambient temperatures that often exist at these high altitudes. Contrails can affect the cloudiness of Earth's atmosphere and therefore might affect atmospheric temperature and climate, which can lead to global warming and things like that. So for my research, as you can see, I've kind of narrowed it down to the main four direct effects that aviation can have on the environment, which are contrails, lead emissions, nitrogen oxide emissions, and greenhouse gas emissions. So the EPA is kind of the main government agency that I've used to draw information from, and they've been active since the early 1990s, and they've just monitored and regulated traffic and pollution and environmental aspects of everything. So in 1970, they established the Clean Air Act, and later on, they began just monitoring the data and temperature, climate change, just to draw in information and then later make rules and regulations from that data. In the United States, some aspects of aviation emissions are regulated through efforts of several government agencies, not only EPA. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, under the Clean Air Act of 1970, has established commercial aircraft engine exhaust emission standards for certain emittents associated with the ground level air pollution. And as we talked about in the earlier slide, um, we looked at the four main direct effects that aviation can have, and lead is one of them. And some background information on this: EPA has required the continuation of monitoring at airports emitting at least 1 ton of lead per year. EPA has also required the states to conduct a year-long monitoring study at 15 airports that emit less than 1 ton per year to determine how these sources impact air quality. And as for the nitrogen oxide emissions, in 2009, EPA's Office of Air Transportation Air Quality and the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, Office of Environment and Energy provided an organic gas specification profile for use in emission inventories of aircraft equipped with turbofan, turbojet, and turboprop engines fueled with kerosene-based Jet A fuel. And then in 2001, EPA began taking steps to propose regulating greenhouse gas emissions, which is what GHG stands for. So they began to propose regulating greenhouse gas emissions from aircraft when multiple legal decisions required EPA to meet an endangerment and finding under the Clean Air Act to reduce the emissions of air pollutants from aircraft that contribute to the global climate change. And then in 2024, EPA submitted an information paper to the United Nations of International Civil Aviation Organization that set a time frame for initiating the U.S. domestic regulatory process for addressing greenhouse gas emissions from aircraft under the Clean Air Act. So that's just some background information, and now we'll go ahead and take a look at the data that I pulled together through my Excel graphs. Okay, so in this graph you can see that I'm measuring American Airlines, Delta flights, and United Airline flights. And I kind of just put a comparison together of the number of flights from 2003 all the way until 2016. And as I said before, 2004 was the year that EPA set the organic gas specification requirement, and you can see the trends are a little bit similar in that they both have a bit of a high and then drop down in 2005 later on. So the flights did indeed go down as the year progressed. And then if we take a look at 2009, we can see that the trends stay pretty much similar, although Delta began to spike up dramatically and American Airlines kind of stayed steady. Okay, next graph. And here, notice that the numbers in millions of passengers. We can see, just notice 2004, the trends right here, and then in the later year 2005, and then also if we take a look at the year 2009 and what happened in the next year as a result of the EPA regulations and rules. Now, this is the net income comparison for all three airlines, and if you just take a look at 2004 and in the next year 2005, net income stayed steady and began to drop a little bit. And then if we take a look at 2009, the net incomes tend to vary a little bit for all of them. So okay, so my conclusions. It's hard to assume that these changes in the data occurred directly because of EPA's regulations and rules. There are a lot of factors to consider in the evaluation of those three graphs, but we can assume minor effects to the three airlines due to the new rules and regulations established by EPA. They probably had some type of minor effect in the airlines. It's unsure to say if the changes in the trends are due to EPA's regulation changes, but now in today's world, airlines are developing sustainable practices and uses for their aircraft. They're chartering more, definitely taking advantage, and just trying to help with all the regulations and rules that EPA is developing. And EPA continues to monitor the environment and initiate changes that will stimulate the environment without harming the economy. And here are my sources. Thank you guys. Bye.